Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to another edition of Community Talk Toronto. I'm one of your co-hosts, Bhagwant Singh.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. And I'm your co-host, Martin Singh. It's a pleasure to be here with you again.
Bhai Sahab, today's show is going to be slightly different from all the other shows. I mean, we are going to actually pay tribute to one of our elders of our community, one of those who fought for the right for the turban, Pritam Singh Jauhal.
Exactly right. And so for those people who are unfamiliar, and I tell you, many of the young people in the community here in Canada probably wouldn't know, and certainly there'd be many others worldwide who would not know at all. Lieutenant Colonel Pritam Singh Jauhal fought for the right to the wear turban here in Canada. And so to give folks a bit of a background on the issue, what it is that through Canada we have legions. And the legions are set to serve, the needs of veterans and their allies. They can be sometimes community places as well. For different times in the year, they are opened up to the general public. Not the least of which, of course, would be Remembrance Day. And so what it was is that we had, our Lieutenant Colonel brother, who was invited, if memory serves me correct, to come and attend a Legion ceremony and also go inside the Legion. So in Canada, what it was at that time is that they had a rule that there would be no headdresses to be worn. And so when he went to go and step inside the Legion, and this was where he was living out in British Columbia, he was denied entry. And this was an absolute shock. And so what happened is that he refused to comply. He said, "I'm not going to take my turban off to come in and participate."
I mean, this has actually made news, Baji. I'm just looking on the phone, and it's actually made news in the Global Mail. I mean,
his passing.
Yes. Pritam Singh Jauhal, a Second World War veteran who later fought for the right of Sikh men to wear a turban in the Royal Canadian Legion's Hall, has died. He was about 95. The exact date of his birth in rural Punjab was not recorded at the time. And he's survived by his daughter, Verinder Baines, in Surrey, BC.
That's it. And so what it was is that this particular event took place in 1993. I remember very, very well. So it's making press now with his passing, but it also made huge press then as well, as it should have done. Not the least of which also is that it had an impact on Sikh people right across the country, myself included.
Were you Sikh at the time?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I started wearing a pug in 1991. And I was also a member of the Canadian Armed Forces. And so, it wasn't long after this event happened. I was attending a ceremony, marching in parade, in the city of Halifax on the Dartmouth side of the bridge in Nova Scotia. And so what it was is that we finished the parade at the Legion Hall. And I think it was Somme Branch, if I'm not mistaken, actually. So it's named after one of the battles in World War I. The particular Legion branch that I was attending, and the folks there were very aware of what had happened, and with Lieutenant Colonel Pritam Singh. And so what it is that you have an event that happened way out on the West Coast, and the impact and the battle that he fought for this right for all Sikh people to wear their turbans in British Columbia, or rather in Canada, and it spanned right across the continent to impact a young Sikh man over in the East Coast as well.
I want to question you there, because I wasn't in Canada at the time, and there may be, like you said, a lot of young people as well, people who weren't, or even more recent immigrants who from our community in Canada, as well as the viewers watching in the UK and Europe. So Pritam Singh Jauhal tried to attend a Legion event. He was invited to attend a Legion event. When he went, what happened at that time?
He was denied entry. And so what it was, they gave him the choice. They said, if you're going to come in, you have to take off your turban. Otherwise, we're not going to let you in.
How was there's a great big fallout after that. What happened then?
Well, the thing that makes it so interesting is that how it actually fits with the whole armed forces generally. The place of Sikh people in the Canadian Armed Forces has evolved over time. To give you an example, when I did my first period of service, on my dog tags, where it lists, your name and your serial number, or your service number, and your religion, mine read other. In my second period of service, that had been improved, and so it then started reading Sikh. In addition to that, for those Sikh people who are vegetarians and whatnot, during my first service period, if you're out for a week or 2 weeks in the bush, you'd be eating craft dinner basically for every single meal because there wasn't any other vegetarian food, or this apple pie piece that they had there as well. Now it's totally changed around. But fascinating, through that entire period of time, the 5 Khalsa Kakars have been recognized as part of the Canadian Armed Forces uniform. There's a section, a big chunk of paperwork and documentation called the CFAOs. And in the CFAOs, they detail each and every single piece of a Sikh person's uniform, and the turban's right there with it. And so it is, with great irony, that the Canadian Armed Forces itself would detail, the fact that Sikh people wear a turban, and in fact supply them with the fabric to tie their turbans as part of their Canadian Armed Forces issue uniforms, and then deny this decorated Air Force Lieutenant Colonel the ability to enter into a Legion Hall to celebrate, his work in service of country and empire. It would have been at that time, in World War II, and and indeed the service of other soldiers, both alive and fallen. And so in that context, though, it was actually a changing period, here in Canada. For our viewers outside of Canada, and also just for a reminder for ourselves here at home, it was around that exact same time period that another Sikh person challenged for the right to wear his turban as a part of the RCMP uniform, and won that as well. And there was some significant pushback to that from people who believed that the RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, for those people who are not familiar, who felt that that uniform was immutable and didn't realize that a number of changes had occurred to both men's and women's uniform over the years to accommodate people of different faiths and different ethnic backgrounds.
So these things were happening in parallel, the RCMP.
Exactly right.
And so the reaction at that time, a bit like today's time, I suppose, the racists and xenophobes would have come out in their hordes and said, "This is changing Canada."
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it was. And in fact, in the case of the RCMP, there was a person in the province of Alberta who, printed and sold many calendars depicting a Sikh person on the front with a turban. Basically asking, is this what our Canada is all about? I guess he made a bunch of money on it. What was fascinating is that the calendar issue actually came back into the news. I think it was about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. So some 20 some odd years after it originally surfaced, just because the guy went about throwing out the rest of the calendars that he hadn't sold. But for those of us who were impacted by that and whatnot, it brought it all back home to us. It reminded us of that very interesting time in which we lived.
So let's pick up with the Pritam Singh, Jauhal, the lieutenant or lieutenant.
Lieutenant Colonel.
Lieutenant Colonel.
Yes.
Who was denied entry. Then what happened? Was he just denied entry and never went to that place again, or Legion?
So what it is that the legions across Canada made the change, basically, right? And so now, Sikh people wear their turbans in the Legion. I don't think there's any issue anywhere, not that I have heard. And in fact, what you see now also is that although our numbers continue to be quite small, that the participation of Sikh people in the Canadian Armed Forces, both as the regular force and the reserve force, continues to increase. And the awareness of it, really, how shall I put it, as a result of the work that our Lieutenant Colonel brother did, I want to say that it didn't fix the situation overnight, but what it did is that it opened up a dialogue. So for say in my own case, when I was studying as a student at Canadian Forces Base Borden, I arrived my first day at the school, and the head of the school brought me in. And he said, "All right, Private Singh, tell me what this is all about," right? And so it was a very, concise but direct and detailed discussion about what my responsibilities are as a Sikh person in uniform, and also, what the responsibilities for accommodation are for the school. And so we went through it. The CFAOs.
What did you say and what?
Well, so what it was is that the commanding officers were interested in knowing, what I felt was part of the uniform and what had to function there. And so what it was is that, he reviewed for me what the turban was interested in learning about it. Similarly, Kara, Kanga, all the other, the kakars, as it were. And so how shall I put it, an unintended consequence of Lieutenant Colonel Pritam Singh Jauhal's defiant stance in the name of justice and humanity, through defending our faith and our articles of faith, was that you had now people very high up the food chain and very high rank in the Canadian Armed Forces being educated by their Sikh members in the rank and file, and so what followed out of that, of course, was a larger discussion, because they don't just select you quietly. What happens is that you get called down to the commanding officer of the school and his senior NCO, non-commissioned officer, to have a chat with them. When you return back to class, of course, all the other students are interested in why, of course, you were pulled out of class and chatted with. And so, it provides an opportunity to educate those folks around you. And so the gift that Lieutenant Colonel Paji gave to us was one that kept on giving after the initial event, and so we were very fortunate in that regard.
And we see across the border in the States, there's the same sort of issues that happen there. I mean, a number of Sikhs who, they haven't been so welcome in the States compared to the Canadian Armed Forces, have they? No,
the thing is this, is that the United States, first of all, in its history, didn't engage Sikh people. I mean, they weren't part of the British Empire for quite as long, and even for that part when they were, they didn't fight alongside Sikh soldiers. They weren't a part of the Commonwealth forces as it were. Whereas when we talk about how Canada was populated by Sikh people, it was Sikh soldiers attended the Diamond Jubilee, returning back home, who passed through British Columbia, learned about it, and then decided to come back after being in India. And so what it is that it's a part of our history. What has happened more recently there is that they've had to get special dispensation in order to be able to get work. I really don't know if they have any Sikh people wearing a pug in combat arms. Combat arms, for those people who are unfamiliar, at least by the Canadian definition, are those soldiers who fight at the tip of the spear, meaning this is your infantry, your artillery, combat engineers, among others, or who are right at the front line.
I believe there's one now.
Could be that.
But the others are, I think, dentists or doctors.
Doctors, yeah. So they're mostly
specialists.
That's it. Yeah, the majority of those folks who have been granted dispensation, are those in the medical profession. And I think that the one officer there who's been granted basically an extended or unlimited dispensation is a doctor. You're quite right.
Yeah, but coming back to Pritam Singh Jauhal, obviously, then what happened to? Was there a case filed, or was it in terms of the Legion, or was it just over time? Each Legion said, "Hang about, let's look at this," and change their policy accordingly.
Yeah, I can't speak for each and every single Legion across the country. I'm not privy to that really, and information. But it's generally understood now that Sikh people can go into the Legions. And also, I should say, it's not as though it's only 2016. It's been that way for some years, and so credit to Lieutenant Colonel Pritam Singh Jauhal's work on that one, that positive change actually happened. Also, too, what happens as a result of this type of thing is that there's another general awareness that happens. Although it's cold when it goes on, they do celebrate at the gravesite for the World War I Sikh veteran who passed away. He's buried here in Canada, not far from where we are right now. If memory serves me correct, I believe it's in the cemetery in Kitchener-Waterloo.
Yeah,
But it is a traditional, World War I gravestone, meaning, so for us Canadians, they have the maple leaf on it and whatnot. And the ceremony is done there each and every single year. The dignitaries come out, a number of Sikh people who are both past and present members of armed forces, Canadian or otherwise, come out to attend. And so there's a greater awareness of the service that Sikh people have done in the past and done in the future. And Lieutenant Colonel Pritam Singh Jauhal, deserves a lot of the credit for that because of his valiant stance.
What do you see the future of the Sikhs in the armed forces? Do you see, I mean, some years ago, and I go across the pond because obviously, like I said, I have 40 years in the UK and only a few here. There was talk of a Sikh regiment. Is there still talk of a Sikh regiment here in Toronto, or not Toronto, in Canada at all, or any progress made on that, or is there any want on the Sikh regiment?
The situation is really quite different here. Some years back, I had made an inquiry if we could do recruiting directly through the Gurdwaras. It was made clear to me that the Canadian Armed Forces does not recruit on a religious base, meaning that they do have a very proactive diversity program. Not just for Sikh people, but minorities in general, and certainly also for women to come and participate. I would say that, in my opinion, it's an ongoing project. Those Sikh people with whom I have spoken with, who are, members of the service, whether it be Air Force, Navy, or Army, feel at home in the Canadian Armed Forces. They do, but again, the numbers are really quite small. If you look, again, if memory serves me correct, if you look at the history of the Canadian Armed Forces, traditionally it's been white, male, rural has been their primary base. They have done a lot of work to reach out beyond that into the Aboriginal community and the various minority communities, but the numbers are nowhere near their target numbers as yet.
Just on the Aboriginal community, how's recruitment? I believe there's quite a large percentage of Aboriginals in the Army, or am I incorrect?
No, their numbers are below target. In fact, there are some parts of the armed forces that have within those small groups large percentages, and the Rangers would be one of them. That's the group that patrols the Northern Territories, right? So up and around Ellesmere Island and different places, maybe not quite that far north, but certainly through Nunavut, Yukon Territory, Northwest Territories, and whatnot. The percentage of Aboriginal people there would be certainly very, very high, but the overall numbers in terms of the total complete combined arms of the armed forces would be small, and I believe it's below their target amount.
So you don't see a Sikh regiment being formed in Canada?
Well, I remember when this was talked about, back in the UK, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Prince Charles actually came out in favor of it, even though it didn't end up going ahead. Dare
I say it, and I'll be very careful, and I would love to hear what our viewers have to say on this. But it might be a broken Tory promise, because if I remember correctly, there was lots of talk by the Tories before coming into power about actually reforming the Sikh regiment in the UK. But we would, our viewers, if they have a view on that, and love that telephone number and our email address is at the bottom. We'd love to hear from you on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a source of pride, for the community and whatnot. But I'm not so sure beyond that it actually serves the larger interest of the Sikh community or the larger Canadian interests. I mean, we would be, I think, unwise to self-segregate, right? And I don't think that we need to do that. Quite frankly, I mean, we've mentioned his name a number of times on the show, but Defense Minister Sajjan, served in the armed forces, was a commanding officer of his unit, did very well. Was decorated by the chief of the defense staff at that time. For those who are unfamiliar, that would be our highest ranking officer in the Canadian Armed Forces, and now is defense minister. And so if you came back and said to me, shouldn't we have a Sikh regiment? My response would be, what goal are we trying to achieve there? What is it that Sikh people have not been able to do that they would be able to do with the Sikh regiment? I think that there's much larger benefit to the broader Sikh community to having Sikh people dispersed throughout the Canadian Armed Forces. So the rank and file throughout of all the combined arms throughout all the bases in Canada come to learn about who we are and what we're able to give in service of our nation.
Okay, just one last, I think, more of a comment from yourself. I mean, this is obviously in dedication to Lieutenant Pritam Singh, and if you'd like to make a few last, points regarding that.
Well, certainly. I mean, on a personal note, I mean, I can say that, my personal ability to function as a full member of the Canadian Armed Forces and to be able to enter leadership halls was personally and directly impacted by his stance. And so I have to, thank him and those around him who supported him in his effort and work. And so, it's deeply touching and moving to learn that he has passed, and we owe him a debt of gratitude, really. So congratulations to him and all the work that he did, both in service and in uniform, and out of service, out of uniform, for the Sikh community. And so a life well lived. And we really appreciate each and everything that Lieutenant Colonel Pritam Singh Jauhal did for us.
And may Vaheguru bless his soul in the life hereafter.
Absolutely.
On that note, we finish our program this week. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.